Welcome to my channel. Subscribe and enjoy my new stories every day. They say trust is the foundation of any marriage. Without it, even the strongest love can crumble into dust. I'd never given much thought to that saying, though, because I trusted Claire completely. We'd been married for almost a decade, with 2 kids who were our entire world. Our lives were woven together seamlessly, or so I thought. Every weekday morning, I'd kiss her goodbye as she rushed off to her marketing job, and I'd head back inside to wrangle the kids into the day. I worked from home and had the flexibility to do the school run, be there for bedtime stories, and everything in between. It felt like the best of both worlds, a balance I'd been proud to build for us. So when it all started to unravel, I was the last to see it coming. It was a Tuesday morning, and we were in our usual chaotic routine, getting the kids ready for school, half joking about who was running late. Claire was at the door, about to head out. She stopped suddenly and patted her coat pocket, muttering something about having forgotten her wallet. She turned, hurried upstairs, and came back down a moment later, wallet in hand and a distracted smile on her face. I didn't think much of it, just waved as she rushed out. But as she left, a crumpled paper fell out of her purse and drifted to the floor. I bent down, half-heartedly intending to toss it in the trash, but something caught my eye. It was a receipt from a jewelry store, a high-end one I knew she loved. Curiosity got the best of me, and I took a closer look. It was recent, just last week, and the purchase was substantial. My mind raced with possibilities. Maybe she'd planned a surprise for me. A gift for our upcoming anniversary. I wanted to believe it, so I tucked the receipt away, hoping it was something meant for me. But as the days passed, my excitement about a potential gift began to sour. There was no surprise. No anniversary gift. Not even a casual mention of the receipt. The suspicion crept in slowly, like a shadow growing darker every time she came home late or checked her phone with more attention than usual. I knew she had work responsibilities, of course. Her boss frequently scheduled networking events and business trips, and Claire often had to attend last-minute client dinners. But now, those events felt different, like they were piling up. The excuse that used to reassure me, just work, nothing to worry about, began to sound thin, almost rehearsed. The tipping point came one evening. She had mentioned that she'd be late for dinner, so I decided to take the kids out for a quick meal. As we were packing up to leave, Claire's phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I glanced at the screen without thinking, then froze. The text was from someone named M. It read, "Can't wait to see you again. Friday night." My heart dropped. I knew I shouldn't jump to conclusions, but every instinct screamed that something was terribly wrong. I wanted to brush it off as a misinterpreted message, but doubt gnawed at me, demanding an answer. That night, I barely slept. Claire was in bed beside me, her face serene, blissfully unaware of the hurricane tearing through my mind. My thoughts raced back and forth, trying to piece together every oddity I'd noticed over the past few months. The sudden business trips, the late nights, the mysterious jewelry purchase, and now, this message from M. I felt sick. My once solid marriage had transformed overnight into a minefield of secrets, each waiting to explode. I knew I had to confront her, but I couldn't face it without more proof. If I was wrong, I'd be tearing apart our life for nothing. But if I was right? I pushed that thought away, not ready to entertain the possibility. The next day, I kept my distance, observing her as though I were an outsider in my own marriage. She acted normally, laughing with the kids, chatting with me about her day, everything seemingly perfect. But now, every affectionate gesture, every casual remark, felt like an act. She would reach for my hand, and I'd flinch, unsure if the touch meant anything anymore. I felt like a stranger, drifting through the remnants of what used to be my life. It was the first time I'd ever felt this way toward her. The trust I'd once held so firmly was slipping, and in its place, suspicion festered. In a moment of clarity, I decided I needed answers. This wasn't just about a suspicious text or a forgotten receipt. This was about my life, my children, and the woman I'd vowed to spend my life with. If I was going to accuse her, I needed to be sure. So, while she was out for work drinks that Friday night, I began digging. I combed through our shared bank account and credit card statements, something I'd never felt the need to do before. What I found was subtle but undeniable. A series of charges to hotels, expensive restaurants I'd never been to, and an uptick in out-of-town charges all aligned with her supposed business trips. Each piece of evidence chipped away at my hope that this was all just a misunderstanding. As the pieces fell into place, the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. Claire, my Claire, had been deceiving me. Betrayal sank into my bones, heavy and cold, but beneath it, a new feeling stirred. Anger. The anger simmered, turning in my stomach, tightening my muscles with every glance at her trail of deceit. I never thought I'd be here, in our quiet home office, poring over my own wife's credit card statements, bank accounts, and emails like some kind of amateur detective. But there I was, checking and cross-checking every transaction, looking for something to confirm what my gut already knew. The receipts and charges pointed to a painful truth, and the text message from M sealed it. This was no business trip, no networking dinner. It was an affair, and it had likely been going on right under my nose for longer than I dared to consider. That night, she was out again, supposedly attending a late client dinner, and the house was silent as I pored over every detail. Each piece of evidence cut deeper, like a knife twisting in a wound, yet I couldn't stop. Claire's work trips were frequent and always aligned with odd charges, hotel rooms in towns with no clients, extravagant dinners for one, mysterious charges under nondescript names that could have been anything. It was all clear to me now, but I needed something irrefutable if I was going to confront her. I needed proof that left no room for doubt, not just for me, but for our kids. They deserved to know the truth of why their family was about to shatter. I started thinking about how I would confront her. I could march into the kitchen the moment she returned and demand answers. But every time I played out the scenario in my mind, it ended with her twisting the narrative or denying everything. Claire was smart, clever enough to get herself into this mess, certainly clever enough to try and wriggle out of it. I wouldn't give her that chance. If she was going to lie her way out, I'd need something so damning that she couldn't escape it. It was time to think like a detective. The next morning, while Claire showered, I went to our phone bill online. Each line of calls and texts felt like a stab in the chest. There it was, the same number with an area code from the next state over. The number popped up again and again, spanning months. I noted down the number, running it through a reverse lookup service, which confirmed my suspicions. It was a disposable VoIP number. Claire's lover had made it harder to trace, but he'd underestimated my resolve. After getting the kids off to school, I sat alone with my thoughts, a cup of cold coffee untouched beside me. The rage was turning into something else now. Revenge had always seemed like a word for people in movies, people with vendettas and dramatic lives. But now it was a living, breathing idea, filling me with a cold determination I didn't know I had. I started planning. Confronting her directly would be pointless without something she couldn't argue away, so I'd go for concrete proof. That evening, while she was out with the kids at soccer practice, I went through her things. The first place I checked was her purse, where I found the usual items: makeup, receipts, stray candy wrappers. But hidden in a side pocket was something that made my stomach lurch, a hotel keycard with no chain attached. She'd left it there, either out of carelessness or confidence that I'd never look. In a twisted way, her oversight was a gift to me, another piece of evidence I could hold on to. I couldn't leave it there. If I wanted to know the full extent of her betrayal, I had to gather everything, every sordid detail. So I set up cameras in the house, hidden in places she wouldn't suspect, small, discreet, and connected to my phone. Part of me felt guilty, sinking to this level, but the anger washed the guilt away. She'd brought this on herself. Over the next few days, I captured conversations, phone calls, texts on her screen, and the occasional whisper of her plans. And that's when I learned the worst of it. She was planning a weekend trip with him, claiming it was a conference. The boldness of it astounded me. The fact that she could walk through our home, kiss our children goodnight, and then turn around and spend the weekend with another man was almost too much to bear. Almost. But I stayed calm. I stayed patient. I'd waited this long, and now that I had her plans, I would wait a little longer. The weekend arrived, and she left as expected, with a quick kiss on my cheek and a mumbled, "Love you." I watched her go, feeling that her words were emptier than they'd ever been, hollow and meaningless. Once she was gone, I went to work. I packed up her things, all of them, into boxes. I left no trace of her in our bedroom, no stray hair ties or clothes in the closet. I took down every photo of us, replacing it with pictures of just me and the kids. By the time I was done, our house looked like it had never been hers. Then I set up the final piece, a letter. I'd written it over the last few days, pouring every ounce of betrayal, anger, and hurt into each line. I told her everything I knew, listed every deceit, every lie, every moment she'd betrayed not only me but the family we'd built together. I left no room for excuses, no openings for a tearful apology. I'd included the evidence I'd gathered, and I even wrote down the phone number of her lover, in case she wanted to contact him to confirm her whereabouts in the near future. The last line of the letter was simple, "Don't come back." Then I set it on the kitchen counter, where she'd see it the moment she walked in. I left it propped up against a box of her things, everything from her toiletries to her favorite mug and even that fancy coat she loved so much. I wanted her to feel the finality of it all, to know that this was no temporary break but an ending, solid and irreversible. The house that had once been our shared haven would be a monument to the family she'd thrown away. Once everything was in place, I called a locksmith. The house was quiet that Sunday evening, every trace of Claire meticulously erased. In her absence, I'd gone over every detail again and again, making sure I'd left no room for misunderstandings. It was all in that letter, the receipts, the credit card statements, the phone records. The entire sordid affair was laid out in black and white, a merciless catalogue of betrayal. Now, there was nothing left to do but wait. I sat in the living room, the soft hum of the clock the only sound. I wasn't sure what I expected to feel, maybe satisfaction, maybe the lingering pain of betrayal. But in that moment, I just felt a strange calm, as if a weight had finally lifted from my shoulders. The anticipation had melted away, replaced by a certainty that this chapter was about to close, one way or another. Just after midnight, I heard her car pull into the driveway. I'd been watching through the window as the headlights cut through the dark, watching as she parked and lingered in the car, likely scrolling through her phone. She probably thought I'd be asleep. My heartbeat quickened as I anticipated her reaction when she walked in, saw the letter, and realized that her double life was exposed. The front door opened, and Claire stepped in, fumbling for the light switch. I stayed out of sight, just around the corner. She set her bag down on the table, clearly not noticing the letter at first. I watched as she walked into the kitchen, where the note sat propped up against the box of her things. For a moment, she paused, staring at the scene. Confusion crossed her face, her brows knitting together as she took in the stack of boxes, the carefully packed items that had once belonged to her. Then her gaze fell on the letter. She hesitated, her hand hovering over it before finally picking it up. Her eyes darted over the first few lines, and I saw the shock set in, her face going pale as she read each accusation, each undeniable fact. A tremor ran through her, her lips parted in shock as she continued reading. I almost felt a pang of pity for her, almost. She read to the end, and then, as though realizing she wasn't alone, looked up and saw me standing there. "Tom," she started, her voice shaking. I could see the panic in her eyes, the frantic search for an excuse, some way to claw back what she'd lost. Save it, I said, cutting her off before she could launch into whatever lie she had rehearsed. I know everything, Claire. The texts, the hotels, the dinners. Your work trips and your client meetings. Every last detail. I kept my tone even, refusing to let her see how deeply this had hurt me. I wouldn't give her that satisfaction. She took a shaky breath, clutching the letter like it was her only lifeline. Tom, it's not what you think. Please, just let me explain. I was confused, I made mistakes, but I love you. I almost laughed at the absurdity of it. You love me? I echoed, shaking my head. Was that before or after the hotel room with him? Or maybe while you were planning your work trips with him? Which part of lying to my face every day showed your love? She looked down, biting her lip, the tears beginning to pool in her eyes. It was a look I'd seen countless times, that careful blend of vulnerability and contrition she'd used in every argument. But now it felt hollow, a rehearsed performance, and I wasn't buying it. Please, Tom, she whispered, her voice cracking. I know I messed up, but it didn't mean anything. It was. I was just feeling lost, feeling like I didn't know who I was anymore. It was a mistake, that's all. I never wanted to hurt you. I crossed my arms, standing firm. A mistake. I scoffed. Claire, a mistake is something you do once. This was a choice. A choice you made over and over, for God knows how long. A mistake doesn't take months of deception, doesn't involve planning trips and hiding details. Her face crumpled, and she took a step toward me, reaching out. Tom, please. I want to fix this. I want to make things right. Don't throw us away over a mistake. I stepped back, letting her hand fall. Us. I repeated, almost stunned by her nerve. There is no us anymore, Claire. You threw us away the moment you lied to me, to our family. You're only upset now because you got caught. Her expression shifted, something darker flaring behind her tears. How can you say that? She snapped, a hint of defensiveness seeping through. You think this is easy for me? Do you have any idea what it's like, being married to someone who's never around, who doesn't even notice when I'm struggling? It was the excuse I'd half expected, the self-pitying justification for her actions. So it's my fault, then? I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. I was too busy providing for our family, making sure you had everything you could ever want, and that's my crime. She shook her head, her tears drying as her frustration grew. You never listened, Tom. You never cared about what I needed, what I wanted. You were always so perfect, so reliable, like a damn robot. I felt like I didn't even exist to you half the time. Her words stung, but I refused to let them hit their mark. I existed for you, Claire, I said, keeping my voice steady. I built my life around you and our kids. I trusted you with everything, and you took that trust and threw it away for someone you barely know. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. I could see her mind racing, searching for something, anything, to make me change my mind. But there was nothing left for her to say. She'd shattered every last piece of trust I'd had in her, and no amount of pleading would put those pieces back together. Finally, she looked down, defeated, her shoulders slumping. So, what now? She whispered, her voice barely audible. I gestured to the boxes. You're going to take your things and leave. I've already filed for divorce. You'll hear from my lawyer this week. She opened her mouth to protest, but I raised a hand to stop her. There's no argument to make, Claire. This is over. You can go back to him or whatever life you think you'll find out there, but it won't be with me. For a moment, she looked like she might fight, like she might argue or beg. But then, something in her face changed. She seemed to understand, finally, that I wasn't backing down, that I'd reached the end of my patience, of my forgiveness. Without another word, she turned and gathered the boxes, her movements slow and mechanical. I watched as she carried them out, one by one, each step taking her further away from the life we'd built together. And with each box that left, I felt a weight lifting, the anger and hurt receding, replaced by a strange, hollow calm. This wasn't how I'd wanted it to end, but maybe it was what I needed. As the last box disappeared from view, I shut the door behind her, feeling a finality settle over me. The home was quiet again, the kind of quiet I hadn't felt in a long time, and as I stood there, I realized that I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even hurt. I was simply done. The life I'd known had ended in those moments, but as I looked around the house, I felt the glimmer of something new, a beginning. This was the start of a life without deception, without the constant ache of suspicion, and for the first time, I allowed myself to hope that it might just be better than the one I'd left behind. The weeks that followed felt like a blur, filled with paperwork, meetings with lawyers, and carefully explaining to the kids why their mother wasn't living with us anymore. I told them she was staying somewhere else for a while, that we were both here for them and loved them, though I couldn't stop the pang of guilt that knotted my stomach with each word. I thought I could handle the fallout, thought I was prepared for what came next. But endings, it turns out, are never as clean as you hope. One cold afternoon, the kids were with Claire for the weekend. It was her first time seeing them since I'd told her to leave, and I imagined the reunion would be bittersweet, filled with careful smiles and awkward exchanges. The silence in the house pressed down on me, an emptiness I hadn't expected to feel so acutely. I wandered through the rooms, straightening pillows, checking my phone, pacing, as if I were waiting for something that wasn't coming. Around midnight, I poured myself a glass of whiskey, letting the sharp burn anchor me as I settled into the quiet. I told myself that I was fine. That I'd done the right thing. But as the hours passed, a sense of unease crept over me, like I'd missed something essential, something I couldn't name. When my phone finally buzzed, it was nearly 2 a.m. I glanced at the screen, blinking through the haze, not recognizing the number. Answering, I braced myself. "Mr. Collins." The voice was soft, gentle, too careful. My stomach tightened as dread washed over me. "This is he." The voice on the other end hesitated before continuing, "I'm sorry to inform you that your wife was involved in a car accident this evening." The words barely registered. I sat there, frozen, as the voice explained that Claire's car had slid on a patch of black ice. She had lost control and veered off the road, the vehicle colliding with a tree. The paramedics arrived too late. The phone slipped from my hand, clattering onto the floor as a crushing weight settled on my chest. In an instant, everything shifted. The anger, the betrayal, the careful resolve, all of it vanished, replaced by a single, aching truth: Claire was gone. The finality hit like a physical blow, knocking the breath from my lungs. The next day, I found myself standing at her apartment door, a single key trembling in my hand. The apartment was as she'd left it, boxes still unpacked, clothes scattered in half-empty closets. There was a rawness to it, a sense of transience, as if she'd been holding her breath here, waiting for something, for me, perhaps, to reach out and forgive her. On the dresser sat a worn leather-bound notebook, its pages filled with Claire's handwriting. I opened it, hands shaking, flipping through the pages. There were entries dated months ago, filled with her worries, doubts, and regrets. The pain hit me all over again as I read her words, her confessions about feeling disconnected, unappreciated, lost in a marriage she thought was perfect on the outside but stifling within. Her words were like echoes from a life I'd never known she led. "I love him," she'd written in one entry, "but I feel like I'm invisible. I don't know how to reach him anymore. It's like he's here, but so far away. I made a mistake, and it's tearing me apart." The entries grew more anguished, as she struggled with guilt and the hope that I'd give her another chance. Her final words were a desperate plea, scrawled on the very last page: if he'd just forgive me, I'd spend every day making it up to him. I'd do anything. My hands shook as I closed the journal, the grief crashing over me in waves. I had never given her the chance she'd hoped for, never let her explain herself. In my anger, I'd shut her out, left her to pick up the broken pieces of our life alone. And now, in the silence of her empty apartment, I realized the depth of the void she'd left behind. I thought of the children and how I'd have to tell them, how I'd have to face their tearful eyes and explain that their mother was gone. And not just gone, gone without the chance to make things right, without a moment to say goodbye. In the weeks that followed, the regret settled in, a dull ache that pulsed with each passing day. I kept thinking of all the small moments, all the quiet mornings and dinners and family outings, each memory sharp with the knowledge that I'd never experienced them with her again. I went through her things, gathering what little remained, each item a reminder of the life we'd shared and the life we'd lost. In her purse, tucked into an inner pocket, I found the receipt from that jewelry store. The one that had set everything in motion. But as I examined it more closely, I saw something I hadn't noticed before, a handwritten note on the back. It was a note to me. Tom, it's not much, but I hope you'll wear it close to your heart. Happy anniversary, love, Claire. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The gift she'd bought wasn't some clandestine trinket for her affair. It was a gift for me, something she'd wanted to give but had never had the chance. All my assumptions, my suspicions, my unyielding resolve to catch her in the act, it had all been a terrible mistake. And now, there was no going back. I went home that night, clutching the receipt, numb and hollow. The house was empty, quiet in a way that felt unnatural, almost oppressive. I went to the bedroom, sat on the edge of the bed, and stayed there, staring into the darkness. The next morning, I found myself looking through photos of our life together, moments frozen in time that felt both familiar and foreign. The anger that had once driven me was gone, replaced by a sorrow so profound that I could hardly breathe. The kids would wake up soon, and I'd have to face them, bear the weight of my choices, and carry the memory of the woman I'd once loved and lost. As the first light of dawn filtered through the window, I sat there, consumed by a grief that I knew would never fully heal, haunted by the knowledge that I had let go of the one thing that had truly mattered. And in that quiet, hollow space, I whispered a final, unheard apology to the woman I'd loved, the woman I'd lost, the woman I would forever regret letting go.